You know, niggas gotta get their priorities together. Got their mind on the wrong things, spending their money in the wrong way.
Trapaholics, real trap shit.
Say you need that car with the rims and a charm, just like Jim. It's more than life. Yeah.
I'm telling you. Talk to him.
Say you need that LV bag with the belt and the hat.
That's all you got though.
It's more than life. Yeah.
Talk to him. Real.
Say you wanna turn up at the club, light some bottles, impress them girls. It's more than life.
Fucking everybody.
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Saints and Appetizers podcast. And who dat? And this evening we have some main course for you. I'm talking about the Saints' reaction to the 26-8 loss to the Los Angeles Chargers, and not overly surprised about how this game turned out. But what was about the only encouraging thing that came from this is the Saints defense, at least for the first half, looked a lot better and didn't allow a 200 yards rushing by their opponent. So I guess that's a positive, but besides that, there's not really too much good to look at. Let's go over just some of these team stats real quick. So the Saints had 15 first downs, but the Chargers only had 19. The fact that this game turned into a blowout is kind of surprising because, I mean, a lot of their stats are very similar. And then rushing yards, the Saints had 21 carries for 117 yards, and then the Chargers just had 29 for 122 yards, but they had a touchdown. And then I guess this is really where like the Chargers had the more of an advantage, I guess, in the game was the Saints threw the ball for 42 times for 22 completions, and that's three different quarterbacks. They tried out Spencer Rattler to start with, Jake Hayner, and even Taysom Hill got in there throwing a pass, but they had 42 attempts for 22 completions for 181 yards, but they didn't have any touchdowns and no interceptions either. They did a decent job not turning the ball over. And then there's 32 attempts for 20 completions for 279 yards, but they had two touchdowns. The Chargers. That's kind of the big difference is the numbers look the same besides the amount of touchdowns. And I mean, you need touchdowns to win the game, and the Saints couldn't find a way to score any the other day. They only had they had a safety and just two field goals in the first three quarters, and then were shut out in the fourth quarter. I honestly knew that the Saints weren't going to win this game when they were able to recover the fumble, the fumbled snap by the punter. Was it J.K. Scott? I think that's what his name is. Fumbled the snap, and when they weren't able to recover it, it gave me Alex Anzalone vibes of the Kansas City Chiefs game a couple of years back in the Superdome, where I had a perfect opportunity to recover a fumble in the end zone and just got knocked out of the end zone, and all they were able to get out of it was 2 points. And then, of course, it's a safety, so they get the 2 points, and then they get the ball right back, and then didn't do anything with it, which shouldn't have been a huge surprise, I guess. Let's see, yeah, J.K. Scott, which that was kind of forced by the pressure of Taysom Hill. So he got a little bit of a spark this week from Taysom Hill being back, just the fact that he can play so many different positions, and he's even a disruptive player, even on special teams. And then this is a killer stat and just continues to pile up the sacks, since you've had to go to Spencer Rattler and Jake Hayner, were sacked 5 times for 32 yards lost. And then the Saints, unlike last week against the Broncos, they were actually able to get some pressure on Herbert, which they didn't register any sacks against Bo Nix, but they had 3 sacks of their own for 23 yards lost. And then the total yards were pretty much the same. It's just the fact that the Saints couldn't score any points. There was 366 for the Saints and 378 for New Orleans. And then the Saints didn't turn the ball over, didn't even fumble it. But the Chargers, on top of the J.K. Scott muff snap on the punt, uh, that they had two fumbles. But of course, just like the muff punt, the ball just spinning around in the end zone where multiple Saints defenders and Willie Gay should have been able to get it for a touchdown. Of course, we've been dealing with this all year where the Saints force at least one fumble a game, it seems like, but are never able to recover it. So they forced two in this game, but didn't do anything with the opportunity that presented itself there. And then technically it says that there's no turnovers by New Orleans and then none by the Chargers as well. But I kind of look at the muff snap as a turnover, but that could be, I guess that could just be looked at as like I guess if it didn't go into the end zone for the safety, I guess I could see where I guess the Saints didn't technically recover it, so that's why it's not a turnover. So it didn't actually get turned over to them. It ended up being a safety. And if J.K. Scott or someone else would have fallen on it inbound out of the end zone, I guess it would have just been a turnover on downs for fourth down. And then the penalty yardage. This is one that really was annoying in this game because the Saints were getting killed in the first half with holding calls, illegal procedures, legal man downfield, all of the first half. It was any time the Saints looked like they gained any kind of traction, they were getting a holding call or a block in the back, which was just crazy because when watching this game, watching it real closely, watching the Chargers offensive line, that they were holding a lot in this game, but the refs like hardly ever called any penalties for holding or block in the back or illegal man downfield. It was very frustrating and very annoying. And this is really one of the first games all year where I'm kind of barking at the refs and kind of upset about how the officiating. But it probably really wouldn't have mattered anyways, but it maybe would have kept the game a little bit closer than it was. But the Saints had like seven penalties for 66 yards, and then the Chargers only had like four for 34. And I think the majority, like five or six of those, came in the first half to the Saints. And I think the Chargers may have just had like one in the first half. And then it's just the stats are almost like mirror images of each other. For third down conversion, the Saints were just 2 of 16. That's just terrible. But the Chargers weren't much better. They were only 3 for 12. I mean, gotta applaud the Saints defense, I guess, for playing a lot better than they have the last 3 weeks, at least in the first half. Looked respectable. Maybe they'd gotten some rest on their 10 days off, but just the fact that your offense can't do anything, can't sustain any drives, can't get any touchdowns, can't even take advantage of opportunities to get recoveries off of fumbled snaps and things like that. They just couldn't take advantage of any of that. And that just, over time, that just wears your defensive out, not just physically, but mentally. They just kind of lose hope and just kind of give up, which we've kind of seen that from the Saints a couple times this year already. The last 3 games and in the second half of this game, they just kind of lose morale and energy. And then the Saints were 1 for 1 on fourth down. That's kind of one of the only positives over the last 2 weeks is that the Saints are like they're 4 for 5 on fourth down. But I mean, it's been in games that have been blowouts. They're trash fourth down conversion. So, and then the Chargers went for 1, and the Saints were actually able to get the stop, but of course, didn't do anything with it. And that actually may have been just registered for the safety. And then time of possession. This has been the difference. Like once again, like the mirror images of each other in this game. That's one of the differences from like the past 3 games where the Saints have had 20 minutes of differential like against the Chiefs and 10 and 8 against the Bucks and the Broncos, which was so the Saints had the ball for 28 minutes and 52 seconds, but I mean, the Chargers only had it for 31 seconds and 31 minutes and 8 seconds. So I mean, it just wasn't that much different. Just the fact that this game was pretty much turned into a blowout in the second half is just kind of wild. It's just the fact that Saints couldn't get anything going and just couldn't score any touchdowns. And the Chargers, when they had chances and opportunities, they were taking advantage of it. And don't even care to go over the yardage number from Spencer Rattler or Jake Haener. My main thing is that Spencer Rattler was sacked 3 more times in this game, and then he was sacked, and then Jake Haener was sacked twice. So there's your 5 sacks there. And then Alvin Kamara was decent on the ground, had 10 carries for 67 yards, and then he actually had 11 targets for 6 catches and 55 yards. And a pretty exciting play in the first half where he had like a screen for 37 yards, and he had like two or three offensive linemen in front of him paving the way. That was one of the few exciting moments of this game. And so that's Alvin Kamara having one of his first 100 yards from scrimmage games in a while. Gone kind of streaky there for a little bit. And then Chris Olave, he came back, and we were talking about how if nothing else, if the Saints lose this game, which a lot of us were probably expecting them to anyways, at least be something exciting and at least worth watching. And at least Chris Olave had 14 targets for 8 catches, 170 yards for 28 yards. And I mean, a lot of that was garbage yards in the second half because, I mean, the first catch and first like third down conversion of the game, he got lit up again. And I was thinking, oh, Lord, geez, some hospital ball from Spencer Rattler, thinking he was concussed again. But thankfully, he was able to get cleared. It was just all body. And it's very similar to the Buccaneers one where he picks up a decent gain for a third down or just a first for a first down and gets hit and right away fumbles it. I don't know what it is with Chris Olave. He needs to put on some more muscle or something just to stop the fumbles and being able to get lit up so easy. And maybe I don't know how much that would help with concussions. Maybe you work on that neck strength or something. But yeah, that was like a heart attack, like right out of the gate of this game, thinking that Chris Olave just got his second concussion in 3 weeks. That would have been terrible. I would imagine that they probably would have shut him down for the rest of the season if that would have happened. Thankfully, it didn't. And then defense, we were talking about the defense had some actually got some pressure on Justin Herbert. Colin Saunders had a sack. Had a sack. Hugo Amadi had a sack where he really just blew Justin Herbert up. That was one of the few exciting plays on defense. And Alontae Taylor and Chase Young split one. And before I miss, like one of the key kind of key control, obviously is one of the best players for the Chargers last week. We had Adam Thielen reincarnate in Lad McCourty, making Marshawn Lattimore his son in this game, who had 6 targets for 6 catches for 111 yards and 2 touchdowns and a 60-yard touchdown catch on Marshawn Lattimore. It didn't do long after Marshawn Lattimore got smoked a couple times by Lad McCourty that he himself out of the game for it seems like this is 3 or 4 games in a row where it looks like the Saints are getting blown out or don't have any real hope of coming back or winning the game. Where just it seems like Marshawn Lattimore just pulls himself. He just is tired of getting embarrassed. But he was actually getting embarrassed in this game. In those previous games where he pulled himself out with a hamstring, he wasn't really the one getting beat or taken advantage of on the defense. He just I think was tired of getting beat, but he was actually getting physically beaten. He was getting picked on by Lad McCourty and Justin Herbert. So be interesting to see that down the week in the injury report if he decides to call it a season and act like that hamstring injury is something more serious than it actually is, or if he just magically heals after hurting his hamstring for like 2, 3 weeks in a row and is actually able to go against the Panthers. If he plays at all again this season, this would maybe be one where he can get the feeling of a win and maybe get a win over the Carolina Panthers. All right, so that's most of the stats there. Let's just go over some MVPs here. So my MVP that I picked pre-game MVP, I picked Kendra Miller. So this would have been like 2 weeks in a row if he was able to obtain this because he had like 6 carries for 36 yards in the game against the Broncos. So he was like one of the only offensive players that did like anything against the Broncos. Well, I mean, it looked like he may be setting up to have a decent game in this one. He had like 5 carries that were pretty impressive, but like 2 of them got called back by penalties, and just so he just only ended up with like three carries for 16 yards with a long of 10, and every one of those carries he was like breaking like 2 or 3 tackles just to pick up a couple of yards. I don't know if that's more reflective on him or the offensive line making it to where he had to break as many tackles just to get the 16 yards off of the 3 carries, but he had like one 12 or 15-yard carry on like second and long get called back due to like a holding call by Lucas Patrick. So we picked Kendra Miller, and I was going on a streak there for a while where I wasn't picking any important players of the Saints or just any real contributors to the Saints because if you followed the podcasts and you know the history, you know here recently, and I had a long streak of where I was picking players to be my MVP, and then they'd end up either having like their worst game of the season or they'd end up injured. So I think this is kind of a dual reflection on my picking these players and then them just right after getting injured or having a horrible game. So Kendra Miller pulled his hamstring, but I think this was reflective on Kendra Miller as well, just because he's been an injury-prone player since the day that the Saints drafted him out of TCU. So now he like after the 3 carries for 16 yards, along 10, he pulled his hamstring on his other leg, not the leg that he had been out for pretty much the whole season up until the Broncos game. Now I'm really concerned and be interesting to find out if he's how long he's going to be out, or just put him on IR, just end this season, or just cut him. I don't know, but that's just super frustrating because with the carries that he had and even the ones that got called back, you can see the explosiveness, the tackle breaking ability of Kendra Miller, but he just can't stay healthy. He can't keep from hurting himself. So that's the offensive post. No, so that was the offensive pregame player that I picked. So the offensive post game MVP, I would say probably Chris Olave with 14 targets for 8 carries and 107 yards. So we got in a long of 28, we got finally got 100-yard game in either receiving or rushing in this game, which I was hoping it would add a little bit of excitement, at least to have like maybe 100-yard receiver and maybe 100-yard rusher in the game, which we didn't get the 100-yard rusher, but at least we got Chris Olave with 100 yards in this game. It would have probably helped a lot if he was able to get a touchdown. And I mean, a lot of his yards were kind of garbage yards at the end of the game where they were already down by 2 scores. But still, just going off of the production, and it's nice to have Chris Olave back and putting up a 100-yard game. And hopefully he can avoid any more concussions or anything like that because he wasn't wearing a guardian cap or 2 or 3 of them like he probably should be wearing. But he needs to bulk up and get a thick neck. So what neck? So that's the offensive post game MVP. On defense, I would definitely say it was Pete Warner who came back and definitely helped the defense a lot. Just from I just didn't in the previous games where he didn't play, you just couldn't really see the sideline to sideline ability from Demario Davis anymore, and you just couldn't see tackling ability from Willie Gay Jr. But you got some of that back, a lot of that back, and it helped the defense all around, at least in the first half. And just being able to stymie the run a lot more than they had the last 3 weeks, and definitely the last 2 weeks where they allowed 200 plus rushing yards. So Pete Warner had 9 combined tackles, 7 solo, 2 assists, and an impressive 2 tackles for loss on some run plays that he was able to get in there and stop. So it was good to have Pete Warner back, and thankfully, at least for now, he didn't get hurt or anything. And then maybe the most impressive and uh, player of this game, like the just total MVP of this game, probably Matthew Hayball. He's been one of the Saints' best players all year, honestly, but he had a ridiculous game where he had to punt it 9 times for 437 yards, an average of 48.6 yards, a long of 59 and 5 inside the 20. I mean, uh, uh, Matthew Hayball and the Saints. I think the Saints have found their punter of the future. I think they've actually finally replaced Lou Headley, Blake Gillikin, and actually replaced Saints legend Thomas Morstead. So that's about one of the few positives that's come out of these last couple games is that we've got to see a lot of Matthew Hayball, and he's looked really good. So that's your post game special teams MVP. All right. Those are your MVPs. And then hot takes. Hot take. Kind of went over this already, but I predicted the Saints wouldn't allow 200 yards rushing. And if they had any chance of winning this game, they wouldn't allow 200 yards rushing. So they only ended up allowing 29 carries for 122 yards and 1 touchdown. I mean, not a phenomenal day stopping the run, but still pretty good and respectable. A lot more respectable than the horrible outcomes that they had against the Bucks and the Broncos previously. So that hot take hit. MVP did not hit. It hit classically with the player I picked. It was injured, gets injured right after. And then picks and scores. This was actually pretty close. And, I think this game was maybe the last hope, last gasp for the Saints to maybe get back in this because it looks like the Bucks are kind of falling off, even though the Falcons are still looking, at least record wise, look strong. At least they're winning games against teams that they should win games against, which the Saints can't even do that. So wasn't too surprised that the Chargers won 26-8 because I mean I prediction was pretty good, pretty close. I picked the Chargers to win 30-17, so pretty close. Even I guess the thing there is the Saints defense played better than expected, and the Saints offense was worse than I expected. So pretty good on at least the hot takes and the picks and scores there. The Saints next game, the Saints are sitting at 2-6, and this season just feels like it's over with. I don't even see the point of some of these injured players coming back. I guess we're probably gonna see Derek Carr coming back, so you'll get a functional offense, I guess, which will be at least not like having to watch like a horror show, a freaking car wreck, and just be a functional offense now. But I just don't even care for winning any games now. I want that top 5 pick. I think they're sitting at 6th right now. So I just feel that's probably what's going to come. That's what's going to happen. Derek Carr is going to come back, and if he stays healthy, that's a big if. He may not stay healthy. He may end up getting hurt with something else. That happened to him 2 or 3 times last year, where he came back, got hurt, came back, got hurt, came back, got hurt. Was just knocked out of games. Didn't miss any time, but this is the first time where he missed two or three games due to injury. So it'll be, well, I guess we'll see how long he stays healthy and how long the Saints protect him. The same with, well, like, what is even the point of Eric McCoy coming back? But the Saints offensive line, from what they started with to begin the season, the first 2 games of the season where they looked so great, the majority, 4/5 of it's back. So maybe they'll be able to do a little bit better job of protecting Derek Carr. But I mean, I don't want Derek Carr to get hurt or anything, but I also don't want him rattling off 3 or 4 more wins and ruining the Saints' chance at a top 5 pick But anyways, I think that's about all we have for you. We'll get into the injury report leading up to the Panthers, and probably just going to be just a horrible game to watch. And hopefully the Panthers and Andy Dalton has a ginger revenge game from them, and hopefully we even get beat by him, because even just losing this blowout by the Chargers, I was surprised. I was still just, after every blowout loss and continuous losing streak, which they're on a 6-game losing streak for the first time since 2005, like almost 20 years. I'm just looking forward to each of these Mondays, and just like, how is Dennis Allen still not fired yet? But I guess they're maybe they're just hanging on to him, and this is kind of Loomis's like sneaky way of tanking, because you don't even have to tank. He's just that bad. That's just how bad he is. But anyways, I think that's all we have for you. So who dat? And can I get a check, please?